Glitchlett, presumably by Reganon. Do you remember when you first discovered glitches in Pokémon? I remember when I did. Summer, 1999 at Kingswood Summer Club. Pokémon Red and Blue had been released the previous year, which I guess would make me 8 or 9. The Pokémon craze was in full swing over here in the UK. Every day I packed up my Pikachu Yellow Game Boy Color, Pokémon Red permanently slotted in the top. My friend and I would gather together some of our link cables for epic trading and battle sessions that lasted the whole day, or just until parents came to pick us up at home time. Around midsummer, our group was starting to feel like we had seen it all and done it all. Sure, I don't think we'd ever caught 'em all, but back then it seemed like an impossibility. We had grinded to level 100, eliminated the Elite Four more times than we could remember. The game was starting to lose its draw, and there were still 4 long weeks of summer left. Then, we saw Missigno. I remember the first kid I knew to have him. He told us his brother showed him how to catch a super rare, super awesome Pokémon. We gathered round as he revealed the Pokémon to us. A magical, distorted reverse L shape that held the key to infinite rare candies. We were all instantly in love and dying to get one of these rare Pokémon for ourselves, so he passed on the secret and showed us how. Within the next few days, our little group was hooked on glitches. We scoured magazines for the latest bugs and tricks, we visited Glitch City, battled all kinds of high-level Pokémon off the coast of Cinnabar, we even caught Mew. But there was one glitch I've never been able to find a record of since. Funnily enough, I can't remember the details of how to pull it off, but I remember the outcome. Glitchlett. The technique to finding this little guy followed the pattern of a lot of tedious Pokémon encounter bugs in Red and Blue. Talk to this guy, fly to this place, it might have had something to do with Celadon. I'm not sure, really. Glitchlett's what you would expect. A glitched-up Diglett. The sprite was mostly intact, but the face was distorted, Missigno style. There were a few distorted lines through it, like scan lines, and the cry was a bit weird too, although I couldn't put my finger on what it was. His level was never visible, but we guessed it must have been over 100, as we could hardly put a mark on him when trying to catch him. Most of us resorted to one-out many cloned Master Balls. We nicknamed him Glitchlett, and that night we were eagerly trying out what his guy could do. The next day we all met up to compare results. By this point, we all considered ourselves Pokemon glitch experts. Experiences with Glitchlett were varied. One guy claimed to have messed up his game so badly he couldn't play anymore and had to reset. Others said they tried to battle with Glitchlett, only to find the game crashed every time they tried. I had the most luck in battles with our new glitch Pokemon. His only move was Dig, and he couldn't learn any HMs or TMs, even those you would expect a Diglett to be able to learn. Against wild Pokemon, Glitchlett was a powerhouse. He never lost PP, and together we KO'd every Pokemon we came across. But the attack itself was odd. It took 2 turns as usual, but after the first turn, it'd be hit with some kind of self-damaging recoil. There was no explanation other than Diglett was hurt and that strange cry, but it never made much of a mark on him. Glitchlett's HP was higher than anything I'd ever seen, and because it only took 1 dig to destroy any wild Pokemon, it was never much of a problem. I laid waste to my friend's teams during linked battles, and he soloed the Elite Four. I remember when things got even stranger. I was leveling a team using the Experience All. Destroying wild Pokemon with Glitchlett seemed the obvious choice, and I had maxed many Pokemon this way in the past. I'd woken up early that morning to level especially, and had spent all day KOing wild Pokemon. At that time I was under my bed covers with my trusty Game Boy Color light. Mum would go mad if she knew I wasn't asleep at this time. Everything was going according to plan, and my new team was leveling up beautifully. I must have been concentrating pretty hard, because it was too late when I noticed how low Glitchlett's health had become. I selected Dig for the final time and watched as he began to descend into the ground. As expected, I received the message Diglett was hurt. I heard that piercing cry, louder than before, and my stomach turned as I watched his health bar slide towards 0. The bar doubled back on itself, and seemed to empty 4 or 5 times before Glitchlett repeated his dying cry, now a horrible noise. Diglett was killed. Do you want to use the next Pokemon? I know it's cliché in these kinds of stories, but I remember that vividly. I selected no. My other team members wouldn't have made a mark on the enemy Pokémon anyway. I was warped to the overworld and found myself back in the unknown dungeon. Opening my Pokémon menu confirmed what I had seen before. My beloved Glitchlett at the top of the party, health reduced to 0. I selected him, not sure what good I thought it might have done, and noticed that something was different. Maybe it was there before, but I think I would have noticed that Dig was now selectable outside of battle. I thought for a moment. Maybe it was the atmosphere, but this move was suddenly chilling to me. Glitchlet had never been damaged by any wild Pokémon, only by this move. It wasn't even as though he hurt himself in confusion with recoil. Whatever had hurt him and ultimately killed him had been underground all along, waiting, sapping Glitchlet's life every time I sent him to attack. His death cry echoed in my ears as I realized what I had done. My thumb hovered over the A button, my brain willing myself to dig to get out of the cave, but my stomach felt sick. What was down there anyway? I was stuck with no choice. The exit was too far away, my remaining Pokémon would be destroyed if I tried to get there. With a lump in my throat, I dug, and my sprite began spinning into the earth, and the screen went black. I wasn't surprised when I realized where I was. Not the entrance to the cave or even the nearest Pokémon Center, but a glitched-out cave that I now realized was some kind of bugged version of Diglett's cave. I checked my Pokémon and saw Glitchlet's health has been completely restored. He was now my only Pokémon, and the other 5 members of my team were missing entirely. I chose Dig again. Oak scolded me. Apparently this wasn't the time to use that. With no means of escape, I set off looking for an exit. My sprite moved slowly, more of a crawl than a walk. As I moved, the cave walls bugged out, turning red, flexing and swelling in and out like the lungs of a monster. Slowly, music began to play, high-pitched, distorted, and horrible. It was quiet at first, but it grew louder with every step. As it played, something became familiar, a familiar tune beneath the whirring bugged notes. Without thinking, I began to mouth the words to the music. Diglett dig, Diglett dig, trio trio trio. Diglett dig, Diglett dig, trio trio trio. Then I encountered a Pokémon. A wild Dugtrio appeared, as distorted battle music began. The level 225 Dugtrio appeared before my eyes. The cry was an awful warped scream that seemed to become a gnashing crunch before stopping entirely. Dugtrio's sprite, like Glitchlet's, was deformed. Dugtrio's 3 faces with hollow eyes twisted into pixelated howls that looked somehow painful. The bottom of the sprite was unrecognizable. It looked as though 6 deformed, clawed arms were rising from the dirt around Dugtrio's body. My only Pokémon was released and Glitchlet's back sprite appeared before me. His cry played again, quiet and seemingly a lot weaker than before. I was just a bystander now as the game took control, selecting an attack from the menu. Of course, Dig was the only option. My hands were sweaty as I gripped the Game Boy tight. My breath was hot on the screen. Dugtrio went first. Dugtrio used Scratch. It hit 6 times, each tear triggering a painful cry from my Glitch Pokémon. Glitchlet was left with a sliver of health as he retaliated with an attack of his own. Diglett used Struggle. It hardly made a mark, as expected, but it was strange how Dig has never lost PP before. As previous, the game selected the next move. As attack was chosen, I noticed that Glitchlet suddenly had no moves. 2 words appeared where the first 2 attacks should have been. No hope. Dugtrio's cry echoed again as it tried to launch an assault of scratches with its deadly horrible arms. Glitchlet was killed after the first strike. Diglett is dead. Do you want to continue? I didn't really understand the question, but it didn't matter. No was selected for me and the battle faded away. Back on the overworld, the walls swelled and glitched before my eyes and the maddening music began again. I inspected Glitchlet. The sprite had changed now, although the face was never visible like Dugtrio's. It seemed to be formed into a pixelated scream. Dark brown streaks cut through the sprite. They looked like claw marks, or blood. I pressed on. I don't know what I was thinking at that stage, just this tiny Pokémon had infected my game in a much bigger way than expected. Glitch Pokémon seemed kind of wrong to me then. It seemed though it was something I ought not to have been messing with. Something we didn't understand or could control. With no Pokemon left, I was surprised to find that I didn't black out or warp to a Pokemon Center. The game just continued as usual. There was only a few steps before Pokemon Counter theme played, and the screen turned black. A wild Dugtrio appeared. This Pokemon sprite was different to the last, almost completely disfigured. The cry seemed as though it wouldn't end, screaming and wailing as the pixelated monster appeared on screen. Through the glitches and cut pixels, I could make out hollow sockets of 8 eyes, 8 terrible clawed hands, and a gaping mouth. With no Pokemon left, my trainer's back sprite faced the glitch head-on. Before my eyes, the screen faded as my Game Boy's batteries cut out. Whatever had just happened gripped me with fear. I didn't sleep that night. I even took the game out of my now dead Game Boy, although I'm not sure what that would have done. Days later, I started that game up. I had not saved during what had happened, so I returned to my last save point. Glitchlett was at the head of my party, dig his only move. I thought for a moment, before abandoning that game forever and starting anew, but I'll never forget how it all started and how it all happened. Like something out of a horror movie that kept on repeating and repeating over and over and over whenever I saw that glitch head-on. But everybody has to move on, and I can't seem to forget the whole thing like it never happened. Like digging into my skin and controlling me and my actions. But it's all in my head. I know I must have been hallucinating this whole thing, but when I see that cartridge, all the horrors I feel are still there, waiting for it to come out and scare me forever in my head for eternity to come. That was Glitchlet. Final thoughts? All around quite good, with very few issues. First thing I need to point out right off the bat and get out of the way though, the line, I know it's cliché in these kinds of stories, but... Once again, I must say that just because you admit that what you're doing is cliché, doesn't make it any less cliché. The worst part about this line is that in this story, it wasn't that cliché. The Pokemon death was done in a decently unique way. If you did the exact same line but didn't start with saying anything about how cliché you think it is, the whole paragraph would have been fine. Aside from that, I thought this was a very good story. It had a great intro going into the bulk of the story, making it more believable, especially for people my age who grew up on the playground with these glitches and stories. It had a nice slow build to the climax, it had a good payoff, and a nice paragraph of falling action to wrap it up without hinting at any real-world danger or over-the-top ending. However, I thought it might have been a bit creepier if it didn't go as far as it did near the end. Special glitchy music, special glitched sprite with claws and hollow eyes, special message about Pokemon dying, that didn't really need to be there. I think if the messages were either the same as usual or just jumbled text, and also that the Dugtrio, instead of having claws, was just very jumbled like Missing No, it would have been scarier as it'd be much more believable to be an actual glitch in the game. That being said, the ending is still genius. I absolutely love that the Game Boy ran out of battery just as the more distorted Dugtrio appeared when no Pokemon are left on the party. It leaves the reader wondering what could have happened, without making them feel like they were cheated out of a proper ending. All around, this story was great, and I'm happy that so many people requested it. That's it for this story and the 5th story for A Creepypasta a Day. 2 more to go. If you enjoyed this story, check out the description where you can find the link to the playlist of the other creepypasta that I've read. You'll also find a link for the Walkthrough Corner, a collaborative channel that I do a Let's Play of Fallout New Vegas on. You'll also find JawanX, Shally, Megapieman PhD, and Whatageek over there, so I hope you check it out. Until next time, sweet dreams.